Hamas never hid their intention to slaughter Jews. Before Hamas and Islamic Jihad created what some call an open-air prison in Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad sent wave after wave of suicide bombers into Israel. Suicide bombers blew themselves up wherever they could maximize civilian casualties. This included buses, supermarkets, malls, bus stops, restaurants, crowded streets, and more. Israel responded by building fences and barriers to prevent further suicide attacks from Gaza. Hamas has spent billions of dollars on building underground tunnels beneath Gaza in order to wage war and terror. Hamas corrupt leaders made sure to enrich themselves and become multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. Above the ground of Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad made sure to leave no protections, such as bomb shelters, for civilians. Hamas and Islamic Jihad openly declare in their words and in their writings that they want to kill the Jews of Israel and wipe Israel out, and that they do not care how many civilians in Gaza have to die and become martyrs to their cause in order for them to achieve their demented goals. Hamas and Islamic Jihad glorify death, martyrdom, and murder. They indoctrinated entire generations of children into believing their only purpose in life is to murder Jews. Hamas and Islamic Jihad have said over and over that they worship death while the Jews worship life, and that this was their imagined strength. But in fact, they made sure to hide themselves beneath and behind civilians, including children, so that children and civilians have to be killed in order to get to them. Other Hamas and Islamic Jihad leaders live in luxury far away from Gaza in places like Qatar, Iran, and elsewhere. The people that value life, not the ones that worship death and killing, are in fact the brave ones, in that they are willing to risk death in order to defend life. Hamas and Islamic Jihad leaders glorify death, yet do everything they can to protect themselves and live in luxury. Gaza was turned into a terrorist indoctrination center, with terrorists building a vast underground terror network, ensuring, with the complicity of the UN, UNRWA, and others, that children were brainwashed into the death cult and that Gaza was a terrorist welfare state. Hamas and Islamic Jihad made sure to use schools, hospitals, community centers, mosques, and all kinds of civilian structures as places to store weapons, build tunnels beneath, and to use as places from which to launch missiles. Much of the world, not just some of the foolish political leaders of Israel, accepted this evil status quo just to buy some years of not all-out war, but foolishly waiting, only made Hamas and Islamic Jihad stronger and more deadly. And then on October 7th, the underestimation of Hamas and Islamic Jihad's determination to slaughter Jews and anyone living on the land of Israel showed how flawed was this thinking. October 7th showed the world the clear line between good and evil. If Hamas and Islamic Jihad entered into Israel, attacked only military targets, did not harm civilians, and treated captured military personnel by the rules of the Geneva Convention, most of the world, including Israelis, would want negotiation with Hamas for a better way forward for all. There would not now be war in Gaza. Instead, Hamas and Islamic Jihad and many others from Gaza on October 7th raped, mutilated, burned alive, kidnapped, murdered, beheaded, tortured, wounded thousands of people for no other reason than that they are Jews or other people living on the land of Israel. Girls and women were gang raped and mutilated, including having breasts cut off, faces and bodies disfigured and mutilated with box cutters and other weapons, genital areas mutilated, and much more. Hamas and Islamic Jihad knew Israel would have to respond to these atrocities. There is not a nation in the world that would not respond. There is not a single military expert in the world, not a single general or anyone else with an answer as to how to fight terrorists, including Hamas and Islamic Jihad, that hide beneath and behind civilians and children, that use children and civilians as human shields without there being civilian casualties. There is a way to stop the killing of children and civilians in Gaza. There is a way to stop the genocidal ambitions of Hamas and Islamic Jihad, who have openly declared they want there to be many more October 7th massacres and atrocities. And that is for Hamas and Islamic Jihad to surrender immediately and release the hostages. In exchange for their surrender, which will immediately end the war. One option is for Israel to give Hamas and Islamic Jihad free one-way tickets out of Gaza, along with releasing all Hamas and Islamic Jihad prisoners to join their many terror-loving supporters that love rape and murder, as long as it is against Jews and not themselves, in Jordan, Qatar, Iran, Turkey, and many other places.